If your football team had one option in their playbook, the results probably wouldn't be great. The same could be said for your investments. SIBO index options like SPX and XSP can help expand your investing strategies with cash settlement and potential tax advantages. If you're ready for a more dynamic game plan, head to betterwithoptions.com. SIBO, life is better with options. Your investments could be too. There are risks associated with SIBO company products. Review the disclosures and disclaimers at SIBO.com/US_disclaimers.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This episode is brought to you by Unstoppable. Discover the inspiring true story about Anthony Robles, who defied every expectation to become a national wrestling champion in Unstoppable, a new original movie from Amazon MGM Studios and director William Goldenberg, evoking the excitement and camaraderie of classic sports dramas and thrilling wrestling matches. Unstoppable features an all-star ensemble cast, including Jarrell Jerome, Jennifer Lopez, Don Cheadle, Michael Pena, and Bobby Cannavale. Watch Unstoppable now, exclusively on Amazon Prime Video.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Welcome back to the Minefield podcast from Anfield Index Pro. As always, I am your host, Alan O'Donoghue, and joined by my partner in crime, Dr. Andrew Vincent. Andrew, how are you doing on this fine Thursday afternoon or morning for you?
Well, yeah, I'd like a transfer to happen.
Okay. For yourself or for Liverpool FC?
I'm trying to think if there's anyone who would take me. But it would leave my solo private practice in tough shape if I went somewhere else.
Maybe it wouldn't, Andrew. No, that's a bigger question.
Gotta have a lot of clients who are just like, all right, cool. Finally was looking to get rid of this guy anyway.
I couldn't tell him nicely, so
couldn't tell him nice. That's it's just a practice that's run on pity. That's what's going on here. No, I'd like something to happen. We need some new blood. I don't understand. I know that there's more going on behind the scenes. Like clearly, Richard Hughes and the other guys got no pictures anywhere. Michael Edwards. Clearly they're doing something somewhere and probably trying very hard. But it's weird. It seems like they've done nothing at all since they've arrived. It's very bizarre and frustrating, but not that frustrating really, because I don't tend to get frustrated about these things.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind a transfer, but I just don't expect it anymore, so I kind of just leave it as it is.
It's just so weird. Like no one else is just as consistently quiet.
Maybe they are. We just don't notice it because we're not fans.
It's quiet. That's a good point.
But yeah,
that's a good point.
But we are, Andrew, here to talk today on a question we got posed in the Minefield Discord on the Anfield Index Pro Discord channel, and it came from Mark, and it's. Now, let's be fair. It is a multi-layered question. So, Mark, thank you so much. There's a lot of time and effort put into this question. And I'm going to slightly paraphrase it. So I apologize, Mark, if I'm putting across the wrong tone that you're bringing to it. But just for us to be able to get through the number of questions that are in there. But it's essentially Mark's asking about Trent and our thoughts, or his thoughts after the Manchester United game, where we've seen him defend well and put in lots of effort defensively, but Mark was alarmed at the defensive and offensive performances, not running enough, being careless, not putting effort to close out his opponents. And he's wondering, why would he want to prove all his critics right when he knows he can perform better? And I suppose he mentions tennis players like Federer and Marat Safin and Kyrgiakos, that they know how good they are. They can't tolerate any mistakes from themselves and therefore basically quit trying, which is a form of self-sabotage. So that he can say, I'm not a good defender when I am a good defender, when I want to be, a form of fear of failure. So the final part of his question is, in that case, some kind of mental work could improve Trent's performance on the pitch if he's more accepting towards himself. And what do you think? So I do want to kind of split it up into sections. So if we take, I suppose at the end of our pod last time, we said, don't want to talk about Trent and the contract situation. And very next podcast, here we are talking about Trent, not necessarily about the contract situation, but it's going to feed into it. And I want to ask you about your experience of a lack of effort, because that has come up an awful lot in relation to Trent, especially recently. And he just doesn't seem to want to be putting it in. Does he just not care? Is his eyes on Madrid, so he's just going out and phoning it in for Liverpool? What's your take on that in relation to the work that you've done with athletes in the past? Is that your experience, that they will phone it in?
Yeah, no. So my experience is that there are things that can be perceived as a lack of effort, but that it's pretty rare for, especially in like a big match, like a Liverpool versus Manchester United, for a high level athlete to just intentionally go out and not put in their best effort, or at least like to intentionally be like, you know what, I don't really care that much. Like, I'm just going to float around. Does it happen from time to time? Like, I'm sure that it does. But I don't think it's as conscious as all that. And there's often things that can be going on that then are perceived as a lack of effort. I mean, one of the big things is like the easiest thing as a fan is to watch someone behaving in a way that you think they should be doing something different, or you can tell like they could be running harder or putting more in or whatever, and just be like, well, they don't care. Clearly that, the effort's not good enough. It's not always as simple as that. And so obviously I can't speak specifically to like, could that be going on with Trent? Yeah, sure. Maybe he's just phoning it in, but I think other things are more likely. So here's a few things that like it could be. One of the first things that can be confused with a lack of effort is a lack of intention and a lack of direction and a lack of clarity. And so sometimes, especially if an athlete loses some confidence, like they'll go from having like a real clarity of intention and here's what I want to do here, here's what I want to do here, here's what I want to do here. And then when you have more things going on in your head, or you're having to think about what do I want to do before I do it, everything's a little slower and a little bit more sluggish. Or, like maybe you have something like tracking a runner. That's obviously the thing that he's been given a hard time about. If the way that process would want to go in your head is in this very automatic, non-conscious way. It would almost be like, what's my job now? What's my job now? What's my job now? Transition, look, track my runner, right? And if that's the only thing going on in his head, maybe he does that at this really full speed, and can do it. We've seen him do it before, although not a ton, which I think is important too. But that lack of clarity of intention, or that lack of like, this is what I need to be focused on now, can easily be perceived as lack of effort. He's maybe just not thinking about it. He's missing it. Maybe it's taking him that extra second to think. By the time he fully realizes, like that person is behind him, beyond him, whatever. And so like it's a lack of intention, or maybe like you would call it a lack of focus on a certain thing, often because there's focus on something else. And that's what I would say another thing could be, is like, I think the part of his game that Trent tends to focus on is on the ball. And I think the way he tends to focus on the game is offensively. I don't necessarily think that means that he can't defend or is a bad defender. But I think taking the extra step then to be aware of what's going on defensively requires that little bit of extra mental effort. If you're not really dialed in, or it's like if you're not in the habit of thinking about that and it requires that little bit of extra mental effort, you might miss it. And I think that's kind of what goes on for him some of the time. Is it's not that he doesn't know the things. It's not that he doesn't know where he's supposed to be. It's certainly not that he's not athletic enough to get where he wants to be. But I do wonder, it's like if you're so focused, like if you've ever played a game like maybe, like our last episode, maybe chess, or like something that like there's multiple facets going on, and it's like you can get really focused on one part of it, and then all of a sudden the person you're playing against has caught you off guard in this other way. I wonder if that happens to him a lot. And from a mental perspective, like I think he thinks the game from the offensive side.
I think you're right, and I just want to jump in on that because what I like about what you're saying is that it's not that he doesn't care. It's not that he's not paying attention to that part of his game. But if anybody talks about Trent, everyone talks about his on-ball ability. And he essentially is our most furthest back playmaker. So the coaches will be likely to be saying, let's get Trent on the ball because he is one of our biggest threats in terms of unlocking a defence and creating opportunities to score for the people who are ahead of him. So essentially everything is saying to him, okay, this is what you need to be doing because this is where your skill set lies. You are phenomenal at picking out passes. You are unbelievable at weighted passes and getting them into the right area and usually picking a really good, if not the best option. Oh, and by the way, just as an aside, the opposition are going to put a really fast, skillful fucker right behind you. Right? So you have to keep an eye on him too. And that is a massive amount of cognitive processing that he needs to go through that most other players don't have to do to the same level. So nobody else is expected to attack and defend like Trent. And I know I would suspect that defensively, the other defenders, their job is to try and mitigate that and try and, have Konate as that support so that does take a bit of the pressure off Trent. And it was working relatively well at the start of the season, and Konate gets injured. And all of a sudden there is not the same level of security behind Trent, which then can impact on not only his defensive performance, but his offensive performance, because he's not necessarily not as confident, but he has more to think about behind him than he normally does when Konate is there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like as you were talking, one of the maybe piece of evidence that supports what you're saying and just highlights some of this is that I think if you were to pick the games where Trent has been defensively very good, probably what you would notice is it's against some of the teams where they pose a bigger threat. And so if you think about usually where Trent, in my opinion and perspective, and maybe someone who's more dialed into this would be able to say, but I think he often does really well against teams where it's expected to be a 50-50 competitive game and a tight game.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
The reason that would be is that like a team that poses an offensive threat against us makes defense more salient. And that's part of how attention works. And if you think about a game like Nottingham Forest is actually a really good example. So much of the focus of our team would have been on attacking because we had so much of the ball, because we know that they only pose kind of a marginal threat defensively, but also because the challenge for us was always going to be, can we get the ball into the net a few times, once, twice, whatever. And you could tell from the outset that they knew this is going to be hard to break this team down. In a game like that, when there's so much you have to pay attention to, like you said, of offense and defense, but there's so much thinking maybe involved in the offensive part of the game, that's going to be a situation where you're more likely to then lose track of a runner, not track a runner. In terms of the effort in tracking back, and I know that's what really bothers people. I know some people have also said maybe there's a bit of an instruction at the moment to like not sprint really hard or not track back really hard. You know, that's harder to speak to. Again, I would be really surprised if...
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Go to Blinds.com for 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
I'd be really surprised if it's, well, whatever, I just don't care. It also seems possible that like early in the season, if he was just sort of like, whatever, Ibu's got it, like he maybe didn't have to track back the same. And I'm positive there's conversations about conserving energy and where can you conserve energy. Like that's part of every sport at a high level is, you know, you're never cutting corners, but you also can't play flat out for a full 90 minutes. At least most players can't. There's some who probably can figure it out, but then they don't also necessarily have the offensive responsibility and defensive responsibility. It's a lot going on. It's a lot to manage. And that kind of complexity can also come across as a lack of effort. There's just a lot to do. Yeah, so I don't, I look at Trent, I think about his game, I think about his moments. I can't imagine him not caring, and he strikes me as someone, and, what you hear reputationally about him is that, like, as soon as he's in a competitive setting, like, good luck turning off his competitiveness. And I think sometimes he almost gets too competitive. Like, he takes on too much, and that maybe distracts a little bit here and there, but, like, it's good luck taking this kid, born and raised in Liverpool, come through the Liverpool Academy, like, and telling him in a game against Manchester United to not compete. Like, I just don't think that's it. There's another explanation there that maybe we just don't know about. I don't think we know about. And certainly this idea of, like, why would he want to prove his critics right? I don't think it's anything like that. I don't think he's thinking about the critics in that situation. I think he's just trying to play the game. I don't think it's a conscious choice by him to switch off unless he's following an instruction. Mm-hmm. But I would be very surprised. And of course, it's completely possible that I'm wrong. Someone could talk to me and be like, yeah, I'm just not that into football anymore. But, like, I would be very surprised if that was the case. I think what we're perceiving as a lack of effort is attributable to something else.
Yeah. And, like, what I find interesting is that when people are talking about it, they will reference things like, yeah, I know he's been injured with a hamstring injury, but, like, yeah, okay, that's the case, but he still should be putting in the effort. But maybe he is worried about a re-injury. And, I suppose if Simon was on here, I definitely heard it on Fatigue Index with some of his guests talking about the concern players have if they've been out for a number of games, coming back on a muscle injury and not wanting to re-injure themselves. So I think you're right. I don't look at Trent right now and go, he doesn't care. His mind's in Real Madrid and he's just dialing it in. Absolutely not. He has reached the heights that he has reached for literally the opposite of all of that.
Right.
He has worked harder than most people throughout his life to get to this point. And again, we've referenced this in the past. Trent is a very rich man. And yes, he's going to be offered a lot of money. But as I will always say to anybody I'm working with, whether they're earning 50 quid a week or 500,000 a week, within 6 to 8 weeks, the money doesn't matter. If you don't like your job's not going to get better because you're getting paid more. You're still not going to like the job. So when Trent is, richer than most of us could ever imagine being, yes, the big numbers might sound, oh yeah, that kind of sounds nice. But he is a winner. He wants to win things on the pitch, I suspect. That, now again, like, we'll always caveat, we could be wrong, but this is just from our experience of working with different people and how they talk about the things that got them to the elite level that they will have gotten to. So let's stop this narrative of he doesn't care, because it's probably not true.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point with the fear of re-injury and how that plays out. That's a really big one that I actually hadn't had on sort of my initial mental list is players are very aware of their bodies and how they feel and any sort of tightness or any sort of fear. And, like, fear can be a big one where someone's like, I'm just not going to go full speed here. And I think the start of this season, if you were to compare how Trent was sprinting and how often, this was one year where, like, it's a season, oh, that guy's fast. And that's interesting, right? Like, I don't think he cares less than he did at the start of the season, but there has been an injury in the meantime. So that's an important consideration.
So I suppose if we were to kind of move things on, So we can kind of put to bed the idea of maybe self-sabotage and stuff like that. But I do want to talk about the acceptance, and I'll twist it a little bit. So, we all need to accept ourselves and our capabilities and where we're at. And just because we are where we are doesn't mean this is the best where we're going to be. We're not static. Things constantly evolve. But compassion is one word I use a lot in the work that I do. And I will always talk about how important it is for us to be compassionate to ourselves and compassionate to other people. And what that does is that allows us to recognize that we can contribute, but it also makes our needs equals instead of putting everybody's needs above our own, because that's unsustainable. And that might feed in a little bit to Trent right now in terms of, maybe he's feeling a sense of pressure to try and prove to everybody on the pitch that I do still care. I do want to be here. If he is hearing the external noise of his head is turned, maybe he's trying to prove on the pitch. And that can add extra pressure to self-pressure. And self-pressure we experience is way bigger than any pressure. So if any of us are out there now abusing Trent online, I could imagine the stress and pressure he's putting on himself is way bigger than anything you're going to say to him, right? But it may be, and I want to get your opinion on this, if you were working with an athlete like Trent, would you be telling him that maybe it's okay to pare back a bit? You don't have to take on to prove to everybody that you do care. You don't have to take the weight of the poor results on your shoulders and fix it. Mm-hmm. Let's look at being compassionate to yourself and what that might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it loops back into the self-sabotage piece a little bit, because the thing with self-sabotage is it's not a decision someone makes typically. Like, usually when people have different patterns that are sort of self-sabotagey or get in their way, it's not like they think one day like, oh, this is getting pretty good, like I'm going to burn it down. Like, like this is too good at the moment, like let me get rid of it. Sometimes what it is like, excuse me.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Your time and expertise are valuable, making Focus one of the most important resources to have at work. These days, professionals spend nearly half the work week on written communication, and it can be difficult to stay on task with all the emails and documents you have to get through. With Grammarly as your AI writing partner, you can stay focused and quickly get through your work with relevant real-time suggestions wherever you write. It works across 500,000 apps and websites, so it can help with everything, from brainstorming presentation ideas to sounding more confident and persuasive in emails and reports. For 15 years, Grammarly has offered best-in-class communication support and enterprise-grade security on a business model that doesn't sell your data. 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast.
There's a discomfort that can come with something being good at a certain moment, and that discomfort like activates certain patterns we have subconscious that create issues. But I think in there, this idea of like a fear of mistakes, or this idea of let me take everything. Those are both things that come up for people, and typically the way I work with those, like the two of them are a little different. But there is this really common pattern of when there's athletes who sort of take on more responsibility for the overall result than they're actually able to be in control of, you can get yourself in that situation we talked about earlier where you're just thinking about too much. And so simplicity and clarity of intention. What am I trying to do and what's my role? That's where you end up with flow and confidence and this really automatic sort of mindset and ability to just interact with the game. When it's more complicated, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to make this happen, I've got to do this too, it's very hard to be in flow. There's this idea of challenge and skill, which I'm sure I've talked about before, and there's a graph, and it's like, as challenge gets high or perceived skill gets low, you're going to be in sort of this anxious zone, or as, perceived challenge gets too low and perceived skill gets kind of too high, you're going to be in this sort of boredom zone, which doesn't happen a lot in high level sport. And then when they're kind of even, when the challenge and skill line up, that's when you're most likely to be in flow. And so one way to add challenge is to put pressure on yourself. I have to make this happen. I have to be the best player on the pitch. I've got to win the game for us. I've got to, and that's going to amp up this perceived challenge. There's a lot to do. That's going to create some anxiety that's going to pull you out of a more automatic state. Another way to do it is to add complexity, or to bring yourself down, right? To bring down skill. And sometimes those things go hand in hand, because it's like the harder a task is, the more I perceive myself to be inferior to that task, the less confident I am that I can accomplish it. So it's like those two almost work in tandem a little bit. The way to shift that is with the task, and to focus on what's the task you're setting up for yourself and what's the challenge. Sometimes the nice little alliterative phrase that I use is like, you can always change the challenge. You can always change the task you're putting right in front of yourself. And so when you have athletes who feel really responsible for a lot, getting them to give themselves permission to simplify is often very difficult. And so one of the hardest conversations, well, it's not hard for me, but one of the hardest conversations for them that I'll often have with like some of the most talented athletes I've worked with isn't about what do you want to get better at? It's what are you comfortable not being good at? What are you comfortable not paying attention to? What are you comfortable letting go? Like, what mistakes would you be comfortable with making?
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of one cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.